We're live.
Hi, everybody. We are so grateful for you coming to join us tonight for a candid conversation with a candidate. I'm proud to be here raising money for Chris Stanley. And in just a moment, I'm going to turn it over to him. But I think everybody on this who's watching this recording or who's watching us live understands what we're up against today. Basically, we're in the middle of a pandemic. The novel coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, has hit us all. And it's also fall. And so we're trying to go back to school. We're trying to start football. We're trying to start sports. And I know if you're like me, you miss all of it. But here's our opportunity to hear from an educator, from somebody who's running for office. And I think of somebody who's got a great shot at joining me in the State House. And so I just hope you all can extend that virtual applause as I hand it over to Chris Stanley. Why don't you tell us about yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you, Representative Galonski. I appreciate that. So my name is Chris Stanley. I am running in House District 59 here in the Mahoning Valley. So, and I am a teacher. I teach 7th and 8th grade social studies for Youngstown City Schools. I teach at MLK on the east side. And I also am the middle school boys basketball coach as well. So fingers crossed we'll still have a season this year. So we'll see. But my wife is a teacher. She actually teaches in the same building. So I teach the 7th and 8th graders, and she teaches the kindergarten through 2nd grade. She's got a lot more patience than I do. I also have 3 daughters. So I have a 16, a 13, and a 9. And then my son is 5. He's the most spoiled boy on the face of the planet. And then we have a dog, Teddy Roosevelt, the dog. And you can probably see over my shoulder here, there's the cat. So I'm sure at some point she'll decide to steal the show. And she's Ringo Stella the cat, and the 3 chickens in the backyard. We have a lot of living things under this house. As I'm saying this, I realize here, but that's who I am in a quick nutshell. I have done everything in my life from when I was 15. I started out as a roofer. I worked as 17. I was in a cabinet making factory, and in 2000 I graduated from the Ohio Fire Academy and EMT school, and I worked as an EMT for a while. Actually, when I decided to go back to college to finish my teaching degree, I worked as an EMT at night on ambulance, and then went to school during the day. And I'm a teacher. I've done a lot of things. I've been a tour guide to Washington, D.C. I've been vice president of operations for a business here in the Mahoning Valley when we oversaw the expansion to Cleveland and Columbus, actually. So, I have a lot of life experience, and I'm hoping to put that all to good use here for my district and the state if elected in November.
Absolutely. And I think that's just wonderful. With a wide and varied background like yours and with your real life experience, I think you bring a lot. And I can only imagine how interesting social studies can be for you. And so did you say 7th and 8th grade?
Yes. Yes.
It's a really great age. Yeah. And so have you guys actually already started back to school, Youngstown?
Yeah. So Tuesday, yes, is that just yesterday? It seems like 10 years ago. Yesterday was our first day with students back.
Sure.
So we, so Youngstown is going all online, and I think is the right call for now. But I'll tell you what, it has a lot of its own challenges, and I was talking with my colleagues, and we are busier now trying to make it sure everything's running smoothly online than if we would be in person. Every educator here watching knows how exhausted you are at the end of the day, and especially when you first start. And I'll tell you, with this being online, because we're teachers, so we do whatever it takes, and we put it all out there. And it's tiring, but I'll tell you what, it was so great to see their faces again. They're so excited to just have that connection again, and revisiting old jokes. 7th and 8th grade, it's the perfect age group for me because we're old enough where we can have those hard-hitting conversations, especially 8th grade when we talk about slavery and the ramifications here on out. But they're still young enough that they can laugh at my dumb jokes. So it's the perfect age group for me. I really, really enjoy it.
Absolutely. And we're just so fortunate to be able to talk with you tonight, an actual educator, a public school teacher, a current public school teacher who, really knows what it's like, and specifically in Youngstown. So why don't, if you can you talk to us about some of the challenges and maybe some of the reasoning behind why your employer decided to go fully online to begin with? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Back in the spring, when we first shut down in March and we were trying to figure out, what was best and what we do. Hi, Jay, by the way, welcome. Um, so we realized that schools are an absolutely essential part of our society to do this, right? I mean, we do meal distributions. We are, a lot of parents going to work depends, of course, on their kids being in school. I mean, on and on and on. So, of course, Youngstown City, we were making sure that we were distributing the meals necessary during the time of the shutdown. And actually, one of the administrators who had been with the district for decades caught COVID-19 and unfortunately passed away. And I think
Oh,
with that experience and just with the data, especially over the summer, um, kudos to Mr. Jennings. He decided to not wait around and play these what if games, but we need to start online. And, when we were back in March, probably just a little less than half of my students didn't have internet at first. And, that's a whole nother issue on its own. But Youngstown City has been working hard all summer to get kids laptops and to get them hotspots and internet access. And I'm very pleased with the planning that has went into this, because I have seen districts, some of my friends teach in, that they found out 2 weeks ago they're changing plans and going hybrid or doing this and that. And so I'm very pleased that we've made this plan to go online for now, recognizing that there's no perfect scenario right now, right? I mean, none of it is perfect. If you go blended, there's downsides. If you go all online, there's downsides. If you go all in person, there's downsides. So I think that, Youngstown City made a concerted effort to make sure that we're putting student safety as a top priority, because you can't teach a student if, God forbid, they pass away from COVID-19. And teachers as well, teachers died this summer teaching summer school from it. So I think that's some of the things that went into Youngstown City making the decisions they did, and I'm proud of our district for doing it.
And I'm really proud too to hear about all of the thought that went into it. And just as you said, the number one priority is really the safety of the educators, the safety of the teachers, and the safety of their parents.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's a really good decision that was made, that based upon your area and based upon the guidance that you had, or I should say that the school system had from your local public health officials, really we have to let the science guide us with this novel coronavirus. And obviously the word novel means that it's a new coronavirus. It's a virus that we haven't encountered before. Our bodies are not prepared to deal with it. And from everything we know, it's definitely airborne. And so at least you're able to be safe at home with your family and still being able to be productive. But I really want to talk to you about some of the things you mentioned when you mentioned that your age group is just the right group to be prepared for, because they're 7th and 8th graders.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of parents, who are not in your situation. Your own children are able to be in school, but you're able to be there with them.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, have you heard from any parents or other educators about their concerns with not having daycare? Well, what do you do if you couldn't be home with your own children? Yeah. I don't know what other parents would do. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So that one, there are stories like that across our state, including my own family. My brother and sister-in-law had to make the decision for her to quit her job. She worked at a preschool, and she sort of ran the whole operation there. And they had to make the decision for her to quit her job so she could stay home, because my nieces, their daughters, are all online this year, and they're young elementary students in preschool. And my brother has the ability to work from home, but he's a programmer, so he is in a lot of meetings, and especially with the smaller kids, not able to make sure that they're on the right place and doing the right thing. So they made that tough choice where she actually quit her job, and they've lost all that income. And so they're trying to make it. And, that story is repeated all across our state. And I know people are frustrated about this, but I think, when you look at other industrialized countries around the world, there's a safety net there. And there's a commitment that, raising children to be productive members of society and making sure that parents have access to daycares and affordable daycare, that's part of the culture there. And we're here, it doesn't seem to be a part of our culture, which is very confusing to me, because you would think that we would feel we need a vested interest in making sure that our working families can be able to get to their jobs, and our children can make sure that they're in an environment where they're learning and becoming eventually productive members of society. But that's a real problem. And, my heart absolutely goes out to those families that are having to make that decision really with very minimal government assistance right now. And I just don't understand that. My heart goes out to all those people.
I really appreciate you touching on that. And that's exactly the position that I feel as a current state representative. I've been a representative for just over 3 years now. But with all of the changes, with the different levels of corruption, I've had, it's not even 4 years and we've had 4 speakers. And
Yeah.
so with the corruption on top of the pandemic, on top of the fiscal free fall, on top of just the unemployment in Ohio, a lot of people are really suffering. And I don't know about you in your district, but I've seen so many people, many more people now impacted by the evictions. And so when you talk about a loss of income, I just am not really sure what Ohioans are going to do. And so, to all of you all who are watching this, I hope you understand that we want your government to work better for you. As a part of the super minority in the State House, we want more people like Chris Stanley to join us. He's a public school teacher. We just don't have too many public school teachers, but there's been, let's admit it, there was a charter school scandal not even long ago. A lot of people have forgotten all about ECOT. I was a juvenile court magistrate during the ECOT scandal, and I just looked and just couldn't believe, the horrors of what was unfolding. And so, there's a lot of corruption, and we're just hoping for good, honest, decent people like you, Chris Stanley, to join us at the State House. That's what we're doing tonight, folks. So if anybody's out there watching us and how you have a few coins that you can give to Chris Stanley, that would be great, because we need him to join us in the State House. And that's the only way he's going to be able to do it, is if you all can give us a little bit of what you can to help him get to the State House. We would really appreciate it. I just feel so fortunate. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I want to cut you off. I actually want to touch upon a couple of things you said there. So, as you're talking about the economic struggles in our state, since 2005, Ohio's economy has grown by 3.4%, while the national economy has grown by 14.5%. We've lost $9 billion since the Kasich administration in tax revenue. We lose $1 billion a year because of the LLC loophole, right? We're the 6th highest state in population leaving our state. And all of this is concomitant with the Republican supermajority. And, House Bill 6, this latest example of corruption, that lost us a natural gas plant that would have created 1,200 union jobs just right outside of my district, but many people in my district would have been able to be employed there. And so, corruption cost my district, people in my district, the opportunity for employment and the opportunity to get Ohio into this 21st century economy. Instead we decided to fund coal burning power plants in Indiana. It's just unbelievable to me. But, the other thing you touched on, which Representative Galonski, I don't know if you know this or not, but I think it makes me a very interesting candidate, is I'm probably one of the only candidates that know firsthand, with firsthand experience, both sides of the charter and public situation. I actually was a teacher at ECOT. I taught at ECOT there, and, we were in our bubble. I was just an educator. I had nothing to do with any of that, right? And so when you're in your bubble, I worked with some absolutely incredible teachers there, and they are all in different districts across the state doing incredible work still. But teachers, we sometimes we can be accused of having bleeding hearts, and I'll accept that. But when we're in our bubble helping our kid, it's hard for us to understand. We're like, well, why are we getting this criticism? We're helping kids. We didn't understand all of the shenanigans that was going on outside. And so that one really hit me in the gut, and it really opened my eyes to what the charter system had become in Ohio and the absolute damage it is doing. I'm a victim of that as every bit as the taxpayers and our students that actually were there in that system. And so when we're talking about the public charter debate, I really feel that's a strength of mine that not many candidates have, because I have that firsthand experience. I know exactly what it was like. I know exactly what it felt like when I was told if we tried to unionize, we just shut it down. On and on and on. So, my commitment to public education is very strong. Ohio is one of the worst states in the union with this charter situation, taking money from our public schools, taking money from, so people can attend private schools coming out of local public school budgets. Mm-hmm. It's killing our schools and it's killing our districts. And if we don't act soon, we are going to lose our public schools. And that's why people want to live where they live, right? Our schools, it's part of building communities. We have to start investing in our public schools, investing in our education system, and making Ohio a place where people want to raise their families again. And right now, that's clearly not happening. And just to bring it full circle, I think that's entirely because of this dark money situation where those in power, the GOP supermajority, feel that they are so above the law. Like you said, what is this, the fourth speaker in the last 3 years? They're so above the law that they're only in it for their own power, their own greed, and for special interests and lobbyists. And the proof is in the pudding on that. The burden of funding our communities and operating our state has fallen squarely on the shoulders of the working and middle class people here. They're taking from our schools, they're taking, and giving. We've created a corporate welfare state in Ohio, and the rest of us are suffering here. And I realize that was a long diatribe, Representative Galonski, but it's so infuriating to me. We know exactly how to build good communities, but we don't do it because one party rule is bad, clearly bad for democracy and bad for the people. And in a state which is 51-49 Republican and Democrats, we should not have a super majority gerrymandered situation in our state.
That's exactly right. And I'm so glad that you did, explain to people, a full understanding that basically, we're 25, 30 years into one party rule. And this is what we get. We get 2 FBI investigations. We get allegations of the largest bribery scheme in Ohio political history. And, and we have a huge pandemic, more people unemployed than, and you talked about where Ohio was even before the pandemic. We weren't in a good place as far as loss of manufacturing jobs. And I just heard recently, I believe it was my congressman, Tim Ryan, who said that, at least 40% of Ohio households, either through rental or through mortgage, they're facing some serious concerns about not being able to pay their mortgage, and they're facing evictions. And I guess what people want to know on this call, tonight is, what would you offer to people based upon your background? You basically a working class individual who understands the struggle. What could people expect from you once you do join us at the State House?
Sure. Well, I fully believe that our government should be of the people, by the people, and for the people. And so, my constituents could count on me to always do what's going to be right for them and for the district and for our state. I'm not going to be beholden to special interests or lobbyists, or most especially political bosses, right? That's what got us in all of this trouble now. And quite frankly, my opponent was handpicked by Larry Householder, and his loyalty lies there and not to our district. One of my big priorities that I want to fight for is fixing our tax policies that have been defunding our local governments for the last decade. They've been defunding our schools. They've been defunding our police and our fire and our roads. And, you know, to touch on your point, you said, you know, I saw a stat that the average American family has to work 56 weeks a year to pay for their housing and their vehicles and their medical. There's only 52 weeks in a year, right? I mean, people are struggling here. They're 1 or 2 paychecks away from disaster. We need to make sure that, you know, people in the state are paying their fair share, no more than anyone else has to pay. But the burden of running our societies cannot be continued to be put upon the working and middle class people here. It's not sustainable, and you can, the proof is all around us in that, you know. And the latest example of this in, you know, House Bill 665, which deals with fairs, a board member from here, the Canfield Fair, which is an amazing event, got through that the Canfield Fair doesn't have to pay their ABC water assessment. So here in my district, there's a lot of infrastructure and flooding issues. And so they've created this ABC district to help ameliorate that and you know, stem the flooding and build reservoirs and so on and so forth. And so we are paying into a tax to do that. Well, my opponent voted to let them out of that. Meanwhile, they have 384 acres of blacktop that creates nothing but stormwater runoff. And that's just another example. So they owe $78,000 this year. If they don't have to pay, that goes on to us, right? And we have to pay. That's just another example of this corporate welfare state that we have created, that the GOP supermajority has created in our state, that is hurting our people. That is just one of a litany of issues specifically that are hurting our people here in Ohio. And I'm not going to stand for that anymore. We have to rebuild our communities. We have to stop people from wanting to leave our state. We have to give people the opportunity to raise their families here and to get good paying jobs. You know, my mother and father-in-law spent their careers at GM Lordstown, retired with pensions. You know, those jobs don't really exist anymore. And it's a tragedy that, you know, we'll see a news story of a CEO getting a $60 million buyout for doing something terrible. But if we say the minimum wage at $7.50 isn't enough, there's absolute outrage. You know, if we've adjusted the minimum wage to where, you know, buying power is since 1968, our minimum wage would be $22.50 right now. It's nowhere close to that, right? If you dare say people deserve $10 or, oh my God, $15 an hour, there's this outrage, and I don't understand it. We have tipped so far into this culture that, you know, maybe it goes back to Citizens United, where corporations are people now. But I just think it's so dangerous, our democracy. If we equate having more money with having a more important voice, then we've lost our democracy. And I think we need to be very careful. And as we make policies that actually help our people and our state, we have to invest in our people. That's what we have to do. And if we start doing that, invest in our people and our communities and our schools, we will rebuild the state and rebuild our communities. It's pretty simple, actually, I think. But, you know, what can I say? Now, getting it done, definitely not simple, especially if you have an obstructionist GOP supermajority. But hopefully we'll change that in November.
Well, and I'm just looking forward to having you, because we do need to change that. We need to break the supermajority so that instead of the gerrymandered districts picking the people that we will represent, it should be the other way around. The people
Absolutely.
should pick who represents them. And that's why I know you'll just be a great addition to the State House. But before we get too far afield, I forgot to ask you the most important question was, please describe your district. Who will you be representing when you join us in Columbus?
Yeah, so the 59th district here in Mahoning County. So Mahoning County is divided. So we have the 58th and the 59th districts. So the 59th, it is along the 224 corridor mostly. So Canfield, Boardman, Poland. And then we have outliers, you know, Springfield, North Lima, Craig Beach. And it goes around there. So But this is, this district, it is a suburban district by and large, and it does bleed into a little bit of a rural district as well. But these are, this valley is made up of those blue collar, hardworking people like my mother and father-in-law who worked at GM manufacturing their entire careers and were able to earn a decent enough living through unions and collective bargaining, which is also under attack in the upcoming General Assembly if we don't break the supermajority. That's what this district is made up of, by and large. And this is a very proud district. People really, they enjoy working for what they have, and this is a very tight-knit family district as well. And if you're looking for some amazing Italian food, we got you covered up here. And Jay's in here too, and there's some amazing yoga places as well. Jay is testament to that down here. But we have great school districts. There's great people here, and I'm hoping that I've made a concerted effort this election to reach out to Republicans I know and just say, look, here's what's happened. Here are my stances on things. We are not going to agree 100% of the time. Not going to happen. But you will never have to wonder where my loyalties lie. And I'm always going to be accessible to you, because I'm not running to win for the Democrats here. I am running to win for everyone, and to make our district in this state, a place of opportunity once again. And that's where my focus is going to be.
Well, that sounds great. And, we're just really lucky to have you joining us, a person who works so hard with that excellent background of working class, parents, just like you described. Looks like you and I have something in common. My father worked for GM in Hamtramck for over 30 years and retired there. And so, sure, I know what it's all about, and you make such an excellent point that why should anyone have to work more than one good paying, family sustaining wage job? Our parents were able to do it, right?
Yep.
And so it looks like, America's going the wrong direction, and certainly Ohio has been too. And that's what we want to bring back. And certainly by electing you, Chris Stanley, we can bring that back. And of course, you've done a great job of correcting me. I have been tweeting accidentally the 53rd district. Please, everybody forgive me. He knows the district representing, and that's what I love about you. You know the district. And certainly, we're really grateful for your explaining to us the district, what it's made up of. People very well, and I just think that's great. One of the things that we have said, as members of the Democratic Party, is that we want to bring back the Ohio Promise, that people can live the American dream right here in Ohio. They don't have to go anywhere else. I know I myself actually settled in Ohio, met and married my husband in law school, and I'm just delighted to call Ohio my home. And I came here for exactly the Ohio Promise, that I could live, work, and retire here safely and securely. And so, I'd like to, if you could take a few minutes while we have a little bit of time here, not much left. But can you tell us about what part of the Ohio Promise are you living, and what would you encourage your district to know about the Ohio Promise?
Yeah, my favorite part of the Ohio Promise is the part that says, we work for you.
Right. Because
that clearly is not happening right now with this supermajority. I mean, House Bill 6. Okay, that's one example. The example I just gave you about the Fair Board not having to pay their tax assessment. Our government right now, as it stands with this supermajority, is working for themselves and special interests. That's not how it should be at all. And so that part of the Ohio Promise it just grabs me all the time, because I just feel that, this supermajority, I think, has lost sight. I don't think that every single one of them, when they got into this, they said, I can't wait to just grow my own power. But they get in there and it becomes part of this culture of corruption that we've seen. And then they become corrupted themselves from part of this machine, and they lose sight of the purpose of serving in government. And, I think part of the problem is you have people who have never served in any capacity in their entire life, or they've never had to struggle and know what it is like to work and live paycheck to paycheck. And so they can't understand the needs of the majority of the people that live in our state. I just look at my opponent, and me, I've worked my whole life for everything I've had. My dad worked at a steel plant, and we had a little hard scrabble childhood, coming up, and that wasn't his experience, and that doesn't make him a bad person by any means.
Right.
However, it does make it harder for him to understand why, when we say these things, that union jobs matter and healthcare matters. He's never had to experience the loss of those things, or he's never had to experience the fear of not being able to pay for your groceries or your mortgage. He's never had to think about that his one day in his entire life. And I think that is on and on and on. They just feel entitled to these positions, and they forget what it's like to serve, or they have never done it. Being a public servant as a teacher and in my EMS field, I mean, those things are important to me, and they're important to my makeup. And part of the reason why I'm running is I want to be able to continue to serve, this state and our people here, because it's one of the most important things I could ever do in my life. And I'm going to put my whole heart into it.
Well, and I don't know how many people have said this to you, but I want to take an opportunity while I can have you to say thank you for your service, because as one of the teachers, as an educator, you're on the front line of this pandemic. It's the educators they're putting their lives on the line, really, by returning to the classroom. And then even if you're not returning to the classroom, either if you have a hybrid plan out there, some school systems are doing that, I understand, or if you're starting out virtually, really, this pandemic, there isn't a cure for COVID-19. And we're really with just the right treatments. And unfortunately, we found out today, not that we're going to discuss it on here, but we found out today that we haven't been told the truth. And so there's so much uncertainty, and really only the science is going to get us through this. And so we're very fortunate to have someone like you who understands through a quality American education and the benefits of a public school education. And I want to say thank you for your service. And I consider people like you who are on the front lines of this pandemic, and certainly, your wife giving her service to us. And that's really what we want to do at the State House, is bring back the service part of public service to the people. And I'm so excited about when you join us to do that. And so for everybody out here watching, I have Chris Stanley here with me. He's running for Ohio's 59th district. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
And
nailed it.
Thank you. And he's running to bring back the Ohio Promise to the 59th district. And I'm thrilled when I can call you my colleague, and when you will join us there at the State House, because we need you. We need you to help us break the supermajority in Ohio and to make a difference for people here. I hope you all will consider donating to Chris Stanley, just like I'm getting ready to go ahead and donate to him, because I believe in him, and I'm excited for him to join us in Columbus to frankly clean up the corruption. And so we're thrilled to have him. And I just want to turn the floor back over to you then, Chris Stanley, to just leave us with a few parting words. If people are out there, they're kind of on the fence, and they're not sure, if Democrats are the ones that can make a difference for us, what would you tell us?
Well, I like to tell a story here. Can I tell a story? Would that be okay?
Please do.
Okay.
Yes.
So, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of angst out there, and a lot of people are fearing that our government isn't working for us anymore. And I've even heard some people said they're not even going to bother to vote anymore because they've sort of given up. And I can't help but to think of 1813. Okay. Now, I'm a real history dork, so that's, of course, where my mind goes. But, in 1813, we were in a war with Great Britain again. And on they created a navy in Lake Erie. And now at this point in their history, Great Britain had never been defeated in naval battle. And of course, the Northwest Territory, they allied with Tecumseh, another great Ohioan. But he was, his ground forces, they took Detroit. They were sweeping down through the Northwest Territory into Ohio. Simultaneously, the British Navy was on the Great Lakes, coming into Lake Erie, ready to poise. If they would have taken Ohio, the entire Northwest Territory would have fallen. Our country might be very different today if the Northwest Territory fell. But of course, Oliver Hazard Perry, they went to work building ships. And the day before the battle, you're going out on Lake Erie, he had this giant blue flag made. And on it, in bright white letters, were the words, "Don't give up the ship." And as he raised it high into the mast, you know, the cheer went out from his ship, and that caught on to all the other ships. They started cheering. They went out and they met the British Navy head on. And it was a brutal fight. And his ship, the Lawrence, coincidentally, which I've named my truck, it was destroyed and it was going down. But you know what he did? He took that flag down from the mast, and in the famous painting that's in the State House, he took on the rowboat and they got across to the Niagara, and he raised it again. See, the British Navy, they thought the Americans would flee, because that's what they had always done. They would fight for a little bit. Maybe they'd get some good shots in, but then they escaped. But he stood and fought. And that day handed the British a defeat, a crushing defeat. And at the same time, you know, Fort Meigs on the ground defeated Tecumseh's forces. Ohio was saved. The entire Northwest Territory was saved there. So my plea to everyone out there in this election, if you are feeling angst, if you're nervous that we're not going to fight for you, we might lose our democracy once and for all, listen, my plea to you, don't give up the ship. We are going to win this thing. We are going to turn this state around. That's a promise to you.
Oh, I love that. What a great story. And you are clearly a history buff. You know, again, Chris Stanley, tonight has been great. I'm really grateful for you giving us a bird's eye view of what it's like to go back to teaching during the middle of a pandemic. And then I love the way you laid out your plan to Ohioans and why they should vote for you. And I just hope people will consider that November 3rd. In fact, you should be voting early. October 6th is the first day of early voting. If you haven't filled out your census, go do that now. Tell everybody you know the census matters, voting matters, vote early. And thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. And thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, Representative Galonski, thank you so much for doing this tonight. And hopefully I'll be joining you on January 1st.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, Chris.